Hey, soldiers, if anybody tells you that China is not a growing economic power that is capable of displacing the United States in more ways than one, run away from that person. China is on the rise, and you've got to understand what's going on here. Otherwise, you're going to be left without a chair when the music stops. What music am I talking about? Well, when the US dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency. That will happen by 2030. How's that going? 2035 rather. Mid 2030s is when America will lose that reserve currency status for the dollar. And how will that look? It's not going to be some official thing that is printed on gold leaf. Instead, dollars held in reserve by other countries, the sum total of those dollars held in reserve is going to slip below the 50% mark. We're somewhere around 64% right now. 64% of world currency reserves are dollars. We're going to fall below the 50% mark. And there's blood in the water, okay? China understands what's going on. China, India, Brazil, Russia, and others understand exactly what's going on, and they're making moves right now to accelerate the progression of America losing reserve currency status. Now, how's that going to look? Okay, again, it's not going to be a light switch. It's going to be a gradual process. It's going to look like what we just saw with the report that we did the other day and showed you how the Inflation Reduction Act is raising energy prices here in America. You're going to see more tax increases as the dollar loses hegemony. Why are you going to see these tax increases? Because the blank check will, it's coming to an end. America's just not going to be able to print up money willy-nilly if fewer countries are holding the dollar in reserve, if the dollar is less attractive than it once was. And that will happen. We will slip below that 50% mark. What that's going to culminate in is we're going to see programs, entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They're going to change drastically. Some could just go bust, all right, insolvent altogether. Others could pay far, far less in benefits. We just had the folk that are on Medicare realize an increase in their health care costs when they're older and no longer in their prime income earning years. So this is hitting them hard. So you're going to have a lot less disposable income out there because people are going to be trying to address necessities. You're going to see higher taxation. You're going to see fewer services at the municipal level. Okay, you're going to see fewer fire stations, fewer police officers, fewer libraries, roads that are going to take longer to repair. Okay, because local and state governments are not going to be able to get as much money from the federal government as they may be getting right now. Now, this is all because of the petrodollar, the U.S. greenback, the U.S. dollar known as the petrodollar. Petrodollars are U.S. dollars paid to an oil exporting country. And petrodollars are the primary source of revenue for many OPEC members and other oil exporters. Now, when we talk about primary sources of revenues for an OPEC member, think about Saudi Arabia. They make the bulk of their money on oil. Now, Mohammed bin Salman is trying to change that. That's why he established that sovereign wealth fund in Saudi Arabia, try to diversify their income stream. They're also making moves by cozying up to China. Now, keep in mind, oil exports settle sales in U.S. dollars because the dollar is the most widely used currency right now. This makes it much easier for these oil exporting countries to invest their export proceeds. But even countries like, say, France, they purchase a lot of their oil, not in euros, but in U.S. dollars. Same thing with countries like Canada. Canada's a big energy producing country. They also use the dollar because the dollar is so ubiquitous. It is the big boy on the block right now. But because we've been doing things like placing sanctions on countries and pretty much acting like a bully, we are now generating a lot of enmity. We're drawing the ire of other countries who are saying, you know what, I don't want the United States controlling my destiny. Therefore, we're going to break away from this paradigm that has as its underpinning the US dollar as the reserve currency. And we're going to chip away with that. There's blood in the water. We're going to prosecute a death by 1,000 cuts for the dollar hegemony. Now, we pay a lot of attention to Zoltan Pozsar. He's an economist. And he's had, a lot. He's not one of these guys who's just, looking at things from a status quo. You're not going to find this guy making the rounds on a lot of CNBC or a lot of Fox News, okay? He gets into the weeds with this stuff and looks at it from a totally different philosophical and economic standpoint. Now, he is allied with Credit Suisse. And he's saying that the de-dollarization of the global oil industry is in full swing. Okay, so that petrodollar could be coming to an end soon. Even if we can't see the final end game, it is happening. 40% of proven oil reserves belong to OPEC plus nations. So we've got the traditional OPEC members and we've got Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. All of them are selling their oil to China at major discounts. Now, President Xi Jinping over in China, he has pledged to ramp up efforts to promote the use of the Chinese yuan in energy deals, not the dollar. The de-dollarization of the global oil industry is in a treacherous mission creep phase. It means it's gradually occurring, and things move slowly until they don't. Okay, so look out. This is starting to happen. Okay, so you've got the OPEC plus members with 40% of proven oil reserves. The countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, most notably Saudi Arabia and the UAE, account for another 40% of proven oil reserves. And they are increasingly cozying up to China. So look what you've got here. You've got these Gulf countries, okay? And you've got the OPEC plus countries. Russia is in there. With them together, you got 80% of oil reserves. 80%. But the remaining 20%, a lot of it is accessible to China. And China is already the largest importer of crude oil in the world. Now, if you're thinking, is this why these nuts down in D.C. are trying to move toward these renewable sources of energy? Look, if that's the case, they certainly haven't articulated that, not effectively anyway. I haven't heard it at all. But even if that's the case, we're still many, many, many years away from being able to power this society in the way we do now. And remember, powering the society in the way we do now is part and parcel to why the economy is strong. If we can't do that, and we're going back to the 16th century with windmills, then, we're not going to have as strong as an economy. So we've got China realizing the position that it's in. What it all means is that de-dollarization is marching to the beat of a fairly steady drum. In terms of global trade, the yuan accounts for around 2.7% of settlements, okay? Less than 3%, while the dollar accounts for 41% of settlements. These are the numbers that prompt the new trend of instant gratification to suggest this is not an imminent threat to the dollar. These people are wrong. The biggest threats take a significant amount of time to develop. But again, the pace picks up once it starts to gain some traction. And I think the United States has put itself in a position where it's going to gain more traction because, again, these countries are looking at the situation and saying, no, I don't like the way they handled that Russia thing. They could do that same thing to us. Now, whether or not cozying up to China is going to be the best idea in the world because they have a long record of being authoritarian, all right? But diversification is always good. So you may have a lot of countries looking at it like, okay, we're going to prosecute some of these sales in dollars and some in yuan. As oilprice.com reported earlier in December, Chinese President Xi Jinping has pledged to ramp up efforts to promote the use of the yuan in energy deals, suggesting at a summit in the Saudi capital that the Gulf cooperating countries should make full use of the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange to carry out its trade settlements in yuan. So they're being aggressive about it. They're being very assertive about pushing this concept that oil transactions be settled in yuan. The year we just exited should be considered the year in which the petro-yuan really took hold, as China forges a path of increasing oil and gas purchases from places that are petro-yuan friendly. Russia's war in Ukraine and the Western sanctions response has only acted as a further catalyst. In a note to clients carried by the Irish Times, Pozar warns, quote, China wants to rewrite the rules of the global energy market, and it will do it by first removing the dollar from the orbit of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, that have been affected by the weaponization of the dollar foreign exchange reserves meant to punish Russia and keep Putin from filling his wartime coffers. China's looking at this and saying, look, if we want to go into Taiwan, they might do the same thing to us. So let's move swiftly on this alternative to the petrodollar. What's happened here is a window of enormous opportunity for Beijing, which has now told the Gulf countries that they are absolutely guaranteed buyers for oil and gas for payment in yuan, with Xi promising to, quote, import crude oil and natural gas in a consistent manner and in large quantities from the Gulf nations. Xi's trip to Saudi Arabia in early December was precisely about the yuan. This was the defining moment for the petro-yuan. It was an invitation and it was well received. China and Saudi Arabia signed over $30 billion in trade deals during the summit. That's $30 billion in leverage that will only help further promote the petro-yuan plan. Now, one thing you got to understand about China is they are culturally a very patient and methodical people. Where we promote 5-year plans here, oh, I'm going to do this in 5 years, I'm going to do that. They look at things from a generational standpoint, 100-year plans. So this is their goal, okay? And the other thing you have to be cognizant of is that this is an ancient society, all right? I never underestimate anyone that may in any way be, anyone or any organization that may be in an adversarial position to me. And I don't think that we should take China's ambitions in this, with regard to the petro-yuan. I don't think we should take that lightly, because from this point on, everything the United States does has the potential to be a reason, more of a reason for more countries to look toward the East to diversify their holdings of currencies or commodities. Now, look, as I said, I believe I said earlier in this report, this is not going to come along with a lot of fanfare. It's not going to be some headline you're going to wake up to. Okay, it's just going to happen. You'll be able to see it happening by virtue of higher taxes here in America, fewer services here in America, and the gradual whittling away of the entitlement programs that so many people have come to rely on. We're just not going to have the blank check to do it anymore. So take a look at this video we did yesterday. It's talking about establishing some side hustles where you can continue to shore up your financial position. Don't rely on this country or any country to do what you need to do for yourself. Watch the video. We got 3 tips and a bonus tip for you to consider setting up a side hustle so you can continue to buy assets. You can secure your position so that when the music stops, actually it's not going to stop. The tune's going to change. When that music changes, you'll have a chair to sit in. Guys, I'll talk to you soon.